The CNN studio was unusually quiet. The lights were bright, almost too bright, casting long shadows across the glossy debate stage. Anderson Cooper sat at the center, flipping through his notes, but his face showed something different to neat hint of worry, or maybe anticipation. The studio crew moved carefully, knowing this wasn't going to be a typical back and forth. Something was off. Something big was coming. On the left side of the stage sat Karoline Leavitt, 27 years old, wearing her signature navy blazer. Her posture was perfect, her blonde hair neatly styled, her eyes sharp and fixed. She wasn't just here to answer questions, she was here to make a mark. A former White House press secretary during the Trump years, Karoline had quickly made a name for herself by defending the administration with fierce confidence. Her supporters saw her as the future of the Republican Party. Her critics called her dangerous. But tonight, she looked ready for battle. Across from her sat Kash Patel, 45.com and collected. No flashy entrance, no dramatic stares, just quiet focus. His dark suit matched the seriousness on his face. Kash wasn't new to pressure. He had served as a national security advisor, a prosecutor, and a key figure in U.S. intelligence. He had sat in rooms where decisions were made that could change entire nations. He wasn't as loud as Leavitt, but everyone who knew him respected his record and his quiet strength. CNN had been hyping this night for weeks. They called it the future of the right. Debate night. The goal was clear: put to rising stars of the conservative movement on one stage and see which vision would come out on top. It wasn't just political theater. This was a test of what the Republican Party would look like in the years ahead. In homes across America, viewers were watching longtime conservatives, swing voters, journalists, immigrants, veterans. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone was waiting. What made this different was not the format, or even the candidates, it was the moment. The country felt divided. Questions of who gets to speak for America, who belongs, who doesn't, were louder than ever. This debate wasn't just about policy. It was about identity, about who gets to wear the label of real American. Both candidates sat straight, waiting for the first question. But behind their practiced smiles, something deeper was building. Tension sat between them like a third guest at the table. Neither one was going to back down. Neither one wanted to leave the stage looking weak. And then came the moment, barely visible to the audience, but easy to spot if you knew what to look for. Karoline leaned forward just slightly. Kash adjusted his tie. Anderson Cooper glanced at the producer behind the camera. Everyone could feel it. What happened next would be remembered for years. Not just because of what was said, but because of what it revealed about politics, about patriotism, about the idea of America itself. No one in that room, not the viewers, not the producers, not even the candidates, could have predicted how personal this night would become, or how one sentence would change everything. The debate started just like any other. Anderson Cooper sat between the two candidates, flipping through his notes, reading off questions about border security and national defense. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. Karoline Leavitt answered with her usual confidence, speaking sharply about immigration. She talked about how America was losing its identity, how open borders were putting families in danger, and how only strict laws could keep the country safe. Her words weren't surprising. She had said things like this before. What stood out was the tone. She wasn't just giving answers. She was building towards something. Kash Patel stayed calm. When his turn came, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't interrupt. Instead, he explained how he had spent years in law enforcement, tracking terrorists and drug smugglers. He talked about the nights spent overseas, working with intelligence teams, trying to keep Americans safe. There was no emotion in his voice, just facts. "I've actually been in the rooms where decisions about national security are made," he said, not watching from the outside. "I've lived it." For a while, the exchange stayed professional. They disagreed, but the attacks were soft. That didn't last. Leavitt leaned forward slightly, her eyes sharper than before. "The problem," she said, "is that too many people try to act like Americans. But they don't really understand this country. They read about it, they study it, but they don't feel it. You can't teach that." Patel didn't flinch. "I've spent my life defending this country in ways most people never will," he said. "I didn't learn American values from a book, I've lived them. I've risked my life for them." The air in the studio got tighter. Even Anderson Cooper seemed unsure where to steer the conversation. Still, he moved forward. "Let's talk about loyalty in government," he said. "It's come up a lot in recent elections. Do either of you believe there are officials today whose loyalty is in question?" That's when it happened. Leavitt didn't smile. She didn't raise her voice. She just let the words fall out, soft but clear. Some people might need to go back to where they came from if they can't grasp what America's really about. The studio froze. A low gasp swept through the audience. Cooper looked stunned, caught off guard by how quickly the debate had changed. Even the camera crew stopped, moving for a second. But Patel didn't respond, not yet. He just sat there, blinking once, his expression unreadable. Social media picked it up almost immediately. Hashtags lit up the screen. Hashtag go back. Hashtag Patel vs. Leavitt. Hashtag real American. The control room at CNN went into a quiet panic. Some producers were already debating whether to cut to commercial. But they didn't. The show stayed live. Leavitt, sensing she had struck a nerve, leaned in again. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Look, she said, we need leaders who don't have to prove they belong here. People who don't have to wear flags on their jackets or talk about loyalty all the time. Real Americans feel it in their blood. They don't need to keep reminding everyone of it. Patel stayed silent. He looked at her, then at Cooper, then at the floor. It was the kind of silence that doesn't mean someone has nothing to say. Means they're deciding how much to say. Then came the moment that pushed the debate over the edge. Leavitt, now completely confident in her tone, dropped a line that would explode across every screen in America. Maybe it's time for you to stop pretending to understand American values and go back to India where you belong. It was quiet for a second. Too quiet. The kind of silence that only happens when everyone in the room realizes they've just witnessed something that can't be taken back. Cooper didn't speak. The audience didn't move. And Patel, he didn't shout. He didn't break eye contact. He just sat there, absolutely still, almost as if he had expected this moment all along. Something had shifted in the room. The debate wasn't about policy anymore. It wasn't about national defense or immigration law. This was personal now. A line had been crossed, and everyone knew it. Viewers watching at home sat forward in their seats. Phones buzzed. Tweets flew. Clips were already being recorded and shared. And Kash Patel, he still hadn't said a word. But the look on his face said everything. Now it's my turn. Kash Patel didn't move right away. He sat still for a few long seconds after Karoline Leavitt told him to go back to India. His hands stayed folded. His eyes didn't blink. And then he smiled. Not a forced smile. Not the kind someone uses to hide anger. It was calm, real, quiet confidence. The audience didn't know what to make of it. They had just witnessed a shocking, borderline racist remark on live TV. Everyone expected him to snap, to fire back, to match her energy. But he didn't. Anderson Cooper stayed frozen in his chair. He looked from Patel to Leavitt, then back, again, unsure if he should step in. The control room producers were whispering in his ear, telling him to move the debate forward, but he didn't. Everyone could feel something was about to happen. Patel leaned forward slightly, his smile fading into a more serious look. He looked straight at Leavitt. His voice was calm but steady. Let me tell you a story, he said. It's about my family, and yours. The room went quiet again. I was born in New York, Patel said. My parents came here in the 1970s from India. They didn't speak much English. They didn't have money. They didn't know anyone. But they believed in what this country could offer. So they worked. My dad drove taxis during the day, worked as a security guard at night, and cleaned offices on the weekend. My mom cleaned homes and raised other people's children so she could help raise me. He paused, letting the silence settle in the room. They never asked for anything. No handouts. No shortcuts. Just the chance to work hard and build something better. And they did. They gave me a chance to get an education, to serve this country, to help protect the very freedoms that let you and I sit here today. Leavitt shifted in her seat. Her face didn't have the same fire as before. Her eyes lowered for a moment. Patel kept going, but not with anger, just truth. Before I came here tonight, he said, I did what I always do. I checked the facts. I looked into your family, Karoline. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. The audience leaned in. The studio cameras zoomed closer. Leavitt looked like she wanted to interrupt, but stopped herself. Your family came to the US from Canada, he said. Not 200 years ago. Not even 150. Just over a century ago. Your great-grandfather tried to enter this country. Wysand was turned away both times. He had no money, no job, no plan. But he didn't give up. On his third try, he got in. Now the audience was fully silent. No coughing. No whispers, just quiet. But here's the part that really got me, Patel said. The person who sponsored your great-grandfather, the one who helped him finally get in, was an Indian-American businessman, one of the few at the time. He had built a textile business and had the resources to vouch for someone else. That person was your ancestor. A wave of reaction rippled through the room. Some people gasped. A few laughed. Not mockingly, but from the shock of it. Others looked at each other with wide eyes. Leavitt's face turned red. Her lips pressed tightly. Together, she had no words. So, Patel continued, when you tell me to go back to India, you're not just insulting me. You're insulting the very person who helped your family become American in the first place. He let that hang in the air. You want to talk about real Americans? Patel asked. Let's do that. He stood up, not in a dramatic way, just enough to command attention. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Real Americans don't judge people based on where they're from. Real Americans don't try to divide. They serve, they build, they protect. My family came here with nothing and gave everything. Your family came here with nothing, but somewhere along the way, you decided to use that story to push others down instead of lifting them up. He turned slightly, addressing not just Leavitt, but the audience and the millions watching at home. We've all come from somewhere else. What matters is what we do once we get here. That's what makes you American, not the flag on your lapel, not your last name, not how far back your roots go. It's what you give to this country, and what you take from it, with respect. He looked down for a moment. The room was so still, you could hear the buzz of the studio lights. Patel looked up, took a breath, and sat back down in his chair. He turned to Anderson Cooper, who hadn't spoken for several minutes. I believe, Patel said, you had a question about border security. The audience erupted. Applause broke out from all sides. Some people stood. Even a few of the camera crew clapped. Anderson Cooper didn't say anything right away. He just looked at Patel for a second, then nodded slowly. No one remembered what the next question was supposed to be, because everyone knew that debate was already over. Within minutes of Kash Patel's closing words, social media lit up like a wildfire. The clip of him calmly dismantling Karoline Leavitt's attack started spreading before the debate had even ended. The hashtags started piling up. Hashtag Patel shocks America. Hashtag immigrant pride. Hashtag Leavitt exposed trending across platforms. On TikTok, reaction videos poured in. People of all ages and backgrounds were tearing up, cheering, or just sitting in stunned silence as they rewatched the moment over and over. What had started as a political debate had now become something much bigger. It was a national moment. What shocked everyone even more was how fast the support came in, and from every direction. Conservative pundits, liberal analysts, veterans, young voters, immigrant families, everyone had something to say, and most of it was in Patel's favor. People didn't agree on everything, but they agreed on this. What he did, and how he did it, was something rare. Something honest. The media couldn't keep up. CNN's ratings for the debate broke their own records. Anderson Cooper later said on air, I've moderated a lot of debates. I've never seen anything like what happened last night. Even commentators known for their political leanings stepped back and gave Patel credit. Tucker Carlson called it the most powerful defense of American identity I've ever seen on a debate stage. Van Jones, not known for praising Trump-era figures, said, I didn't agree with everything he stood for, but what Kash Patel did was pure American. Grace under pressure. Ben Shapiro tweeted, that was a masterclass. Full stop. And then came the post from Donald Trump. No one knew what to expect. Leavitt had been one of his most loyal defenders. Patel had also served closely under him. But Trump's message, posted to Truth Social, was short and clear. Kash Patel is a great American. Some people forget what America first really means. Legal immigrants who love our country are America first. It was a shocking moment, essentially, a public split from Leavitt. From there, her campaign crumbled. 3 major donors pulled their support within hours. By the next morning, half her staff had resigned. The state GOP issued a cold, carefully worded statement, distancing itself from her comments. She tried to recover with a press conference, where she claimed she had been misunderstood and never meant to question anyone's loyalty. But the full video was everywhere. No one was buying it. Within a week, she announced she was dropping out of her congressional race, saying she needed time to focus on family. No one believed that either. Her political future was over. For Kash Patel, everything changed. In the days that followed, his inbox filled with requests. Speaking, invites, interviews, news features, even book deals. He wasn't just being praised, he was being lifted up as a voice the country needed to hear more from. There were even quiet conversations about him running for higher office. But Patel didn't rush into anything. When asked, he said, "I'm not thinking about what comes next. Right now, I'm thinking about what just happened and what it says about who we are." What stuck with people wasn't just the facts he laid out, it was how he did it. Calm, confident, focused on truth, not anger. He didn't try to humiliate Leavitt. He let the facts speak. That's what people respected. He didn't fight back for himself. He fought back for every family who had ever been told they didn't belong. For every kid who's ever felt like they had to prove they were American enough. In a final interview days later, Patel said something that people kept quoting: "America isn't about where you came from. It's about what you give back." That line made it onto posters, tweets, and even classroom walls. It was simple, it was honest, and it said everything. What Patel showed that night wasn't just a better political argument. It was a better version of what being American means. One built not on bloodlines or last names, but on service, effort, and truth. It wasn't about winning a debate. It was about reminding people who we are. And in the end, that message, spoken quietly, clearly, and without anger cut through all the noise, it reached people. It stayed with them. And it left the country with a question that didn't need politics to answer. What have you done to make this place better? Two halves.